Our fear is the thing that makes it hard to accept love, to accept that the reality is love, that you're love, I'm love, the rocks are love, the trees are love, the grass is love, the sky is love, everything is love. And it's all for you. Hello friend, John Dalton here for the Emergence podcast, where we go into love, the mystery and consciousness. And in this episode we're going into balancing your inner and outer worlds, unlearning fear and accepting love, radical self-reliance, and satisfaction and success. Okay, I had a question. Somebody wrote to me and said, "Hello John, I had a question that has been raised in me as I've been going into the mystery throughout my day. I go between my role in the illusion and into the mystery during my day. Before, I used to only play my roles and act in ways people thought of me because I was afraid of people thinking poorly of me and of my roles. That's what my mind thought I was. Now I play my part because that is my role in the illusion. Now that I see it, I can really play it. It really is play. I slip into the role I play with the other. Roles as boy, son, helper, student, leader, annoying driver, tired person, slacker, etc. Yet when I catch it or notice it, I can go into the mystery being above and all of that outside of the roles. Of course, I find myself lost in the roles, thinking I am these roles, but I can gently guide myself back to the mystery. To what balance should one stay in the mystery or play part in the roles? Can one play their role fully and also stay in the mystery? How do you handle it? Thank you for helping me in my journey. Everything is blooming. I've learned a lot in the past few months from the awareness, consciousness practice you have shared." Well, that's great. I'm so glad everything is blooming. I love getting emails like this. So it's a good question. And the short answer is both at the same time. You can be both in the mystery very deeply and fully involved in existence and fully involved in the roles as this person describes them. The idea of separation really comes from our mind, because understanding our mind doesn't really understand the mystery. It can never experience it. Not that we don't want it to, but as I've said before in meditation, it's like we go into a room. The mystery is like going into a room, and my mind cannot get into that room. It's not that I don't want it to, but it's like a force field on the threshold, and it's like it just disappears. My mind just disappears. That's why my mind doesn't register time. It's why I'm not that big on meditation as we must become good meditators. I don't care about that. I do care about the mystery, and I do care about growth in consciousness. So the ideas and the concepts around the mystery, even the word the mystery, that's just something I came up with because I couldn't think of anything else to say, because it is a bit of a mystery to me, and yet I know it, but I know it in a part of me that's not my mind, and that's hard for my mind to get its head around or to understand, because my mind thinks it's me, just like I'm sure your mind thinks it's you. So the thing about sort of seeing that existence is an illusion, it's really important to ground that all the time, because your mind it feels pretty solid, but it's actually quite fragile, and it's not that hard to fragment your mind. That's why people can go and go on retreats or do things, and they can go into a sort of psychosis where it's clinically be described as psychosis or something along those lines. But really what's happened is their mind has fractured. Their mind has kind of actually got it, that it's not a real thing. and that the presence behind the mind, or the thing that animates the person's life, is the actual reality of the person. And that can be very unsettling and disorienting for the mind. So you've got to be very careful with your mental health and how your mind stays together, and that you handhold your mind into these realizations and these awarenesses. And this idea of, am I in the mystery, am I in the existence, both exist at the same time. Somebody else asked me a very similar question during the week, and the way I described it to them was, it would be like standing beside me, and we're both very interested in what's going on in front of us. There's all sorts of farm equipment and machinery and people and things, and it's just very captivating. And then I might say to you, you see that windmill on the far hill there? And you sort of look up and you go, oh yeah, I can see the windmill on the far hill. What's going on in front of us hasn't stopped. It's still, the farm machinery is still going, the people are still going. But now you're also including the windmill in the distance. And you can kind of go back and forth between the two, or somewhere in the middle, and both exist at the same time. The windmill in the distance and all the interesting stuff that's going on in front of you. And that's kind of the way it is with the mystery. When you become aware of the mystery, or you gain knowledge of the mystery, it's like you're aware of the windmill on the hill. It's not like I'm either looking at the windmill or I'm looking at what's in front of me. You can hold both together simultaneously. But that can take a while, because it would be like if you had spent your whole life just looking at no further than 10 meters in front of you. Your eyes would be set into this focal length. And to see something in the distance would be quite hard, I used to see this training people for craniosacral therapy. Because in order to do craniosacral therapy, you have to be very still on the inside, because initially you're trying to feel with your hands a very subtle rhythm in the person's body. This is the craniosacral rhythm. So it would be like me explaining to you about the cardiac pulse, and saying, it kind of goes this speed, it feels like this, put your hands on the person's wrist. I mean, even that's tricky enough, and feel it, or maybe under here you might feel it, and, combination of being told about it and what you feel in your hands, you go, oh yeah, I can feel that now. It's very similar. The craniosacral rhythm moves in a certain way, has a certain speed, and it's much harder to feel. So when we start, it's all very quiet. The room, even if there's, 20 or 30 people in the class, it's all very quiet. The person is lying down, the person is putting their hands on them, and they're very earnestly, tuning in. And it takes a while. It takes a long time to be able to feel it, and to feel it in a useful kind of way. Initially, it can just feel like something that you get little glimpses of it. Then over time, it gets clearer and clearer and clearer. And after about a year, students would be like, yep, I think I've pretty much got this craniosacral rhythm thing down actually, it was a little bit longer than a year. And then we'd start to work with children or younger people or babies. And all the confidence would go out the window, because it was very hard to feel it in something that was moving. So if you're trying to work with a 2 or 3-year-old and they are just rolling around the floor and pushing your hand away and sticking their finger up your nose and doing all the things that 3-year-olds do, it's not still, it's not peaceful, it's not calm, it's mayhem. But you can't kind of say, oh, like, I can't do it. Can you hold your child down, please, to the parent? That's not going to work, because you have to get a natural sense of what the rhythm is doing and what the person's system is doing. There's a lot more to it than just the rhythm. So they go, students go through this very difficult process of quickening, where they have to be able to be very still on the inside as still as they were when they were working on adults who were lying down very quietly in the camp, to being very still on the inside while there's chaos going on, because sometimes kids can scream and shout as they're releasing things, and it can be a lot of activity. So it's kind of similar. They learn to be very still on the inside while engaged in something very dynamic externally. And the mystery, being conscious of the mystery, always kind of reminds me of that it's, possible to be very conscious of the mystery, the windmill on the horizon, and be very engaged in what you're doing. And that's why when we're doing the Space for the Mystery on Mondays, and if you don't know what that is, I do 2 sessions on Mondays, every Monday, for where we meditate together. And by meditate, I mean we go into the mystery together, because there's power in doing it in a group. And always, as you come out of what would be called meditation, there's a lot of power to be gained in that process of how you come out of it. Because what my mind will do is go, oh God, meditation, I hate meditation. Okay, still so boring. Even after whatever, 30 plus years, it still finds it really boring. So what my mind would like to do would be, it's almost like my mind is holding its breath for 15 minutes. Because I only really advocate 15 minutes. I wouldn't do it much more than that. But do it many times during the day. Because I always want to ground what I'm doing in existence. I want to help my mental health stay nice and intact. So, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours of meditation, you go into an altered kind of place, and it's very much harder to kind of keep your the coherence in your mind. Anyway, my mind would like to go, okay, 15 minutes, all right, I can put up with this for 15 minutes. And then at the end of the 15 minutes, when my little timer goes off to say, okay, that's 15 minutes, my mind would like to go, great, okay, that's over, thank God. Back to the momentum, back into it, back into existence. Forget about all that stillness stuff, forget about all that mystery stuff. Let's get back to, being stressed about that email. Let's get back to all that stuff, So what I encourage everyone to do is to try and have the smoothest transition between where they are in their inner state at the end of their 15 minutes of being in the mystery and opening their eyes. So I try and encourage people not to punctuate it at all, not to put a full stop at the end of the meditation, to allow it to transition and to just include vision in it. So they're as deeply inside themselves as they could be. They're in the mystery or wherever they are at the end of the 15 minutes. And then I encourage people to register where they are before they open their eyes. Just like take a little reference photo of it or something like, it's not a photo, not a visual, but just this is the way I am. And then to open their eyes and to register what impact that has on their inner state. And often it's a feeling of being pulled forward, and then to kind of close their eyes again and go, oh, okay, I felt like I'd been pulled out into existence, but no, it's still here. I'm still in connection, still, present in the way I was before. And then they open their eyes again, and they get pulled forward again, maybe, but not as much. And then they keep opening and closing their eyes to balance the inner state and the outer state. And what we're heading for is being able to be as still as you were, or to be in the mystery in the way that you were, with your eyes fully open, still present, and seeing that, oh, I don't need to think as much as I thought I did. And my mind doesn't need to grind back in the way that I thought it did. And that it's almost like each time you go into the mystery, you bring a little bit more of it with you into existence, so that you can be very still while you're anxious. You can be very still while you're talking to the postman. You can be very still while all the thoughts are going on. You can see them going on. It's a little bit like, if you see in those Star Wars movies where they go to one of the very built up planets, and all the cars are flying overhead, you know. Yeah, that's what the kind of thoughts look like. You can sort of, you're seeing them going by, very, very still. So that both the windmill on the horizon, or the mystery, and all the interesting stuff that's in front of you, you can hold it all. Because part of the mystery is seeing what you're not, which is your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings, all these things, and getting glimpses of what you are, which is this presence that holds it, this container that holds the whole thing. Nothing to speak of, yet everything. So, I hope that helps. I hope that clears it up. Both. As I say, short answer, both. Hold both at the same time. Farm news. Well, this really, which is trimming, giving the trees a bit of a haircut. With all the storms that we had blowing through, a lot of the trees have broken branches and they're leaning over the laneway on the way down to the house. So I've had to, well, I didn't really notice because, you know, I kind of like it. But yeah, somebody was delivering something and they were like, can you cut those branches, please? I can't get my truck down. It's taking the wing mirrors off my truck. So I was like, well, okay. And he didn't look like the sort of fellow who said things like that to people. So yeah, that's the main kind of farm news. I've been giving the trees a bit of a haircut so that people can get down the lane without having their wing mirrors taken off if they're trucks.
Now let's have a look at some of the memes on the Further Emergence Instagram feed. The first one says, the spiritual journey is the unlearning of fear and the acceptance of love.
Unlearning fear. Sounds easy, doesn't it? It's not. It's not at all. Because it's very deep in us, fear, and it's very justified. That's one of the ways fear perpetuates itself, justification. Oh, you've got to be careful, you've got to watch out for yourself, you've got to take care, look at history. And that's all valid. To a degree. But spiritual life goes, you're going to be dead sometime. And that sometime is going to be sooner than you think. And then all the fears, the thing you were afraid of, then there's no justification for them. There's no justification when you're dead. What I mean by that is, I had a friend one time, just the one time. No, I had a friend who had terminal cancer. And he was very okay with it. He was a lovely spiritual man. You know, like he rang up the funeral home himself because he had a love of wood. He used to work with wood. And he thought it was a terrible waste of wood to build a coffin, put him in it, and then burn the whole thing. So he rang them up and was like, I want to order a funeral. And okay, and who's it for? Me. So anyway, he got it organized so he didn't have a coffin. And one of the last times I spoke to him, he was taking care of all his affairs, selling things, taking care of his partner, talking to anybody he needed to talk to, taking care of all the practical stuff, like organizing his own funeral. And I only spoke to him on the phone. I remember very clearly him saying, you know what, John, I spent my whole life being afraid of things. And now I see it was all the things I was afraid of, there was no need to be afraid of them. It was pointless. And man, those words penetrated me to my core and messed me up for a long time. Because I was riddled with fears. I felt. And I was like, oh, wow. What's wrong with me? Why can't I be just like my friend and, have no fear? It only dawned on me many years later that, when you're close to death, of course you're going to be in that headspace because there's no consequences to anything that you do, because a lot of fear is to do with consequences. And he was facing into no consequences. And you see that in movies like Groundhog Day, where it dawns on the guy that it doesn't matter what he does, it's going to be a new day in the morning and there'll be no consequences. And of course he goes wild, kills himself, robs banks, dresses up as Clint Eastwood, the whole bit. It's a very human response. So of course my friend who's very close to death is going to say there's no consequences, but consequences are part of why we're afraid. But ultimately he was right in a paradoxical kind of way, because he was saying there's all the things I was afraid of, I didn't need to be afraid of them. And that's true. All the things we're afraid of, all the things I'm afraid of, you're afraid of, ultimately we live in a dream for which there are no real consequences. There are consequences within the dream, but not outside it. And outside it is where we go to every night in deep dreamless sleep. So it's where we came from, where we go back to. So in that place, everything that happens here, there's no consequences. It is a little bit like playing a video game. If you die in a video game, it doesn't matter. You can just play another game. That's not to say you don't take it seriously. It's very important to take the game seriously. But balancing that with fear is something I've learned. It's not my natural state. That's the thing. And my natural state is the acceptance of love. And again, these are easy little words to hear. They sound kind of lovely. And it's easy to kind of feel, oh yeah, the acceptance of love. Accepting love is not easy, because that's the end of fear. That's the end of all the sad stories. That's the end of so much. You have to let go of so much to really accept love as the reality that it is. Love doesn't care whether you do or not. Love is just going to be love. It's just going to do its thing. But you can dress it up in lots of different ways. The spiritual life is this, the spiritual life is that. But when you get down to it, it is this. It's the unlearning of fear and the acceptance of love. And those two are not together by accident. Fear and love, or fear is the thing that makes it hard to accept love. To accept that the reality is love. That you're love, I'm love. The rocks are love, the trees are love, the grass is love, the sky is love, everything is love. And it's all for you. When you really let that in, it's pretty wild. And when you let it in, there's no fear. Not that letting in love gets rid of fear, but you realize that there was never, that fear, what felt like such a palpable, real thing, when you let in that fundamentally everything is love, you realize it never existed in the first place. That's what I mean about there's no fear. It disappears. But don't feel like you have to hold on to that state. It's always a bad idea to try and hold on to anything in the spiritual life. You can have this instant of knowledge, and then it can pass, and then you can be afraid again. And then it'll come again and it'll go again. That's okay. But even having that knowledge, that little instant of knowledge, makes a big difference.
The next one is a quote from Carl Jung. He says, "I studiously avoided all so-called holy men. I did so because I had to make do with my own truth, not accept from others what I could not attain on my own. I must shape my life out of myself, out of what my inner being tells me or what nature brings to me."
Well, this is Carl Jung pretty much saying what I've been saying about the time of the spiritual master is over. He was ahead of his time, obviously, because he would have written this in the 40s or the 50s, probably the 40s. But I think it's really important right now to evaluate everything against your own inner sense of things. Because even when you do that, it's tricky. Like my spiritual master, Barry Long, used to regularly say, don't believe anything I say, test it all in your own experience. And even with that, I would still kind of go, yes, Barry, you know. It's a bit like that Monty Python thing where, in the life of Brian, where all these followers appear outside his door, and he's trying to stop them from following him, and he's saying, but you're all individuals, and they all go together all at the same time. Yes, oh Lord, we're all individuals. And it's like that. Like even when somebody, the guru, the master, the spiritual teacher, even when they're saying, don't believe anything I say, test it in your own experience, even with that, it's still hard to not do that. So if they're saying just believe everything I say and be a so-called holy man, well, that's even harder again. And if they're on if part of their own unconsciousness is that they are hungry for power over people, or they want money, or they want sex, or whatever, all the usual sort of things that gurus get up to, then it's even worse, So having a very strong inner compass is really important. And being able to find out what the truth is for yourself, what's true for you, is so important. I think now more than ever. I mean, we're seeing this kind of reflected outside in all the fake news and misinformation. I saw some little article somewhere saying that they're starting to teach now in schools how to find, how to discern between misinformation, basically how to navigate misinformation. Great, it's a great life skill. But it's the same in the spiritual life. But in the spiritual life, it's even more charged because it's all inside. So it's not like you can go and fact check something. If somebody says something, this is the truth. This is this is what it's all about. You can't go and fact check that. You can't. You have to listen to what they're saying and check it on the inside and see if it's true. And it's not easy. And it's like we'd love for somebody to tell us, wouldn't we? Wouldn't we love for somebody to go, now look, here's the truth of life. Here's how it all works. Here's what it's all about. And here's your purpose. That'd be great, wouldn't it? But I'm joking about it because it's not how it works. We have to find these things ourselves, And it's like I'm going to be getting ready for the enlightenment retreats in Madeira in September. Already I'm thinking about it, and it's very much part of it. It requires huge self-reliance to begin to entertain the possibility of getting enlightened, and then to define it, and then ultimately to arrive at a place where you know it to be true for yourself. And it doesn't matter what anybody says. That's like, I have got lots of unconsciousness like everybody else. And I have insecurities, and I question myself about things like everybody else. But being enlightened, amazingly, I've never had it about that. It's always been very solid on the inside. It's probably one of the most solid things on the inside. And I know to get to that place, it required a huge amount of self-reliance. Now, I'm not saying you have to go and get enlightened or anything like that. I'm not saying that at all. But in the spiritual life, this process of knowing something to be true yourself, that's why I keep saying the time of the guru is over, the time of the spiritual master is over, the time of the spiritual teacher is over. I keep saying, I am none of those things. I'm not interested in being any one of those things. I am just like you, and the only reason I'm saying this stuff is that it might be of help. I'm not saying that I know the truth. I know what works for me, and I share that. in a friendly way, like a friend would. Like, I went to see this great movie, I think you'd really enjoy it. That's about as deep as it goes in terms of my motivation to say anything. And anybody who gets up on a stage and starts laying down the law that this is the way the world works, this is the way the spiritual life works, as if it's true, and there is one truth, is a so-called holy man or woman. And I would discourage, I would treat it with a lot of caution, because it's so seductive. Tell us the way it is. Make it simple. But it's not simple. And not in my experience anyway. You have to find it for yourself. You have to come back to your own. Is this true for me? I hear it. I love the idea of it, but it just doesn't ring true for me. I just don't get it. And then you have to face that and go, God, I have to go and, I have to do some more research. I do have to look somewhere else, talk to someone else. Because most people who talk about consciousness or the spiritual life or that kind of thing, it's always a percentage of how much of it is useful or how much of it is going to ring true for you. It's rare that you'll get 100%. In fact, if you do get 100%, I think you're probably not noticing the person's unconscious, because it seems like it just comes with the being alive, that we all have unconsciousness that we're working our way through. So if you think that there are some people who don't have that, well, that's where a lot of manipulation and power and bad things can happen if you stop using your own discernment. So I think old Carl was on the right track here with his avoiding holy men. I don't know if I'd avoid them. I like listening to them, but I listen to them knowing that they've got their unconsciousness. But then they often say a lot of good stuff. Maybe it's 50% good, 50% rubbish. Maybe it's even 90% good. The more good that they say, it actually makes their unconsciousness more, difficult, because it's harder to see it and to kind of go, that bit's true, but this bit's not. If they've got like 90% of what they say is brilliant, then you're more kind of in the habit of going, oh yeah, that's good, oh that's good, that's good. You're sort of nodding, It's like that thing that they do with people where, you can get a person to nod their head by asking them a lot of questions that the answer to the questions is yes, and then you could slip in a no one, and chances are they'll say yes as well, because they're just in the habit of nodding their head. It's kind of like that when somebody's got a lot of truth and they say a lot of good things. You have to be even more vigilant then for what their particular unconsciousness is, and to be okay with going, yeah, that 90% great, that thing, no, don't really get that.
And the last one says, a satisfied life is better than a successful life, because our success is measured by others, but our satisfaction is measured by our own soul, mind, and heart.
It's a nice idea, isn't it? The satisfied life as against the successful life. Because satisfaction, it's very personal. Only you can know whether you're satisfied or not. Success, on the other hand, is very external. Other people can see it. It can be defined. You can say, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to own this car, this house, earn this amount of money, run this race, climb this mountain. And then you either do it or you don't. And other people can say, remember all that money you said you were going to make? Or do you remember that car you said you were going to buy? And you were like grinding your teeth there, oh God, what did I say that? And that's because success is measurable on the outside. Satisfaction, though, that's just between you and you. And you can tell people you're satisfied, and they can go, oh well, he says he's very satisfied, that's great. And that's fine, but you have to look at you in the mirror, and if you're not satisfied, you're going to know about it.
You're going to know whether that's true or not. The upside of it is, can you be happy enough with just your own satisfaction? Is that going to be enough for you? That's a big deal. Because oftentimes when it comes to success, part of the allure of success is that other people can see you being successful. But with satisfaction, nobody's going to see that except you. Is that going to be enough for you? Is that going to be enough? Just you. You're the only one who knows. When I do this thing, I'm going to be satisfied. It takes a lot. It takes a lot of what New Age people would call self-love to be okay with that. And that comes down to whether you are okay with just your own counsel, if you can keep your own counsel, where if you knowing about something is enough, other people don't need to know it. You don't need to look for outside acknowledgement, outside confirmation, nothing. You don't need to look for anything outside you. That if you know it and you're satisfied and that's what you were going for and that's enough for you, that's plenty. That's the job done. Sounds good. It's not easy to do that, to be completely alone in your triumphs. Can you do that? That's not to say celebrating with other people there's anything wrong with that. There isn't, of course. But can you do it? Is it enough on your own? Or do you need other people? And the thing is, if you need other people, then you are at the mercy of other people, or you are dependent on other people. You're looking for internal solutions externally. That never goes well, because external things change. People might be, cheering for you today and trolling you tomorrow. And that's not going to be good for your mental health if you're dependent on them. So this idea of satisfaction, of coming into a place where you can be satisfied. Maybe you'll be successful as well. That'd be nice. Both successful and satisfied. But can you be okay? Is it enough for you to just be satisfied? And if you can do it, if you can swing it, it's a lot more sustainable. It's the difference between something that burns very brightly, so this would be success, and you get a lot of heat from it and light, but it doesn't last long. It's kind of superficial. Satisfaction is a slow, humming warmth that just goes on for a long, long time. It can go on your whole life if you can refocus towards it. And of course, as I say, both can happen at the same time. But of the two, I'd go for satisfaction any day of the week. That's all I have for you this time. I trust you're well. I trust you're of good cheer. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.